There is a moment almost no one ever sees, not after the feeling, not when the mind starts speaking, but right before that. So subtle, it doesn't even feel like something you could notice. Nothing has a name yet, no meaning, no story, no you inside it. Just a soft movement, passing through, without stopping, and most of the time, it goes completely unseen, because the mind is already waiting to turn it into something, into a reason, a memory, a reaction. But what if everything you experience doesn't begin where you think it does? What if it begins before the story, in a space you've never really stayed long enough to feel? Think about the last time something affected you. A message, a look, a single tone in someone's voice. It felt immediate, like it happened to you right away. But did it? Or was there a brief opening before anything became personal? A space where nothing was wrong yet, where the feeling had not been named, where the experience had not become my experience. It was just there, simple, unformed, undefined. And then, almost instantly, something shifted. Not outside, but in the way it was seen. And from that shift, a direction began, a meaning formed, a reaction followed, a me appeared. So quickly, it felt like it had always been there, but it wasn't. And if you look closely, you might begin to notice something. The moment itself was never the problem. Not the word, not the situation, not what happened. Something else was happening at the same time. Something quiet, something invisible. A movement that turned a simple experience into something that mattered, into something you had to hold, into something that felt like you. And this movement happens so quickly, you don't see it begin. You only feel what comes after. And by then, it already feels real, already feels personal, already feels like it's yours. But what if that was the moment everything actually started? At first, it feels very simple. Something happens, and you feel it. A word is spoken, and something tightens inside. A moment appears, and suddenly there is a reaction. So naturally, you believe the feeling came from the world, from what was said, from what was done, from what was missing. It feels direct, immediate, undeniable. And because it feels so clear, you don't question it, but if you slow down, just slightly, something begins to shift. The moment itself was simple. Just a sound, just a glance, just a passing event. It didn't carry meaning on its own. It didn't say what it meant. And yet, almost instantly, it became something you could feel. And this is where something very subtle begins to happen. Not in the world, but in the way the moment is seen. A soft movement turning into interpretation, a neutral space turning into something personal. And it happens so quickly, you don't see the transition. 1 second, there is just experience. The next, there is meaning. And within that meaning, something starts to form, a center, a reference point, a sense of me. Not because it was there from the beginning, but because something began to gather around the moment. Quietly, almost invisibly. And once that center forms, everything begins to organize around it. Thoughts return to explain it. Memories appear to support it. Emotions repeat to reinforce it. And now, It doesn't feel like just a moment anymore. It feels like something about you, something that matters, something that needs to be understood, or fixed, or resolved. And this is where it becomes heavy. Not because the moment was heavy, but because it became personal. Because something that was once passing is now being held. And the more it is held, the more real it feels, until it no longer feels like something that happened, but something you are inside of. At the beginning, there was no you inside the moment, only a feeling, moving, without direction, no owner, no center, no identity attached to it, just experience, happening on its own. But then, something very subtle begins to shift. The mind doesn't remain with the feeling as it is. It starts to look at it, to recognize it, to compare it, to place it somewhere it can understand. And in that movement, a distance appears, not in space, but in the way the moment is seen. The feeling is no longer just happening. It becomes something being noticed, and in that noticing, a position begins to form. At first, it's almost nothing, just a slight sense of here and there. The feeling and something that seems to be looking at it. But slowly, that looking takes shape. It becomes a point of reference, a place the experience is being seen from, not clearly defined, not solid, but enough to create a center. And from that center, everything begins to change. Because now, the feeling is no longer just happening. It is happening to someone, and that someone feels like you. Not because it existed from the beginning, but because it is forming right now. And this is the moment almost no one ever sees, the exact point where nothing becomes a me. A feeling becomes my feeling. A tension becomes something wrong with me. A moment becomes something happening to me. And once that happens, it feels complete, solid, personal, real. But look closely. The me was not there at the start. It wasn't inside the feeling. It wasn't inside the moment. It appeared after the interpretation began, after meaning formed, after something was taken in and made personal, so quietly. You didn't notice when it became you. And once the me appears, everything begins to organize around it. Thoughts come back to explain it. Memories rise to support it. Emotions return to strengthen it. And what was once just a passing movement now feels like a personal experience you have to carry. Something to protect, something to fix, something to understand. And this is where the weight begins. Not from the moment, but from what it became. Because once there is a me, there is something to defend, something that can be hurt, something that must continue. But before all of that, there was only a feeling that came and went on its own. There is a moment, so small you almost never see it. Not when the feeling appears, not when the story is already there, but right in between. A turning point. So subtle, it doesn't feel like a turning. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, nothing you would call a change. And yet, everything changes there. The feeling is still the same. The world has not moved, but something begins to lean, a slight movement toward the experience. Not away, not resisting, but closer, as if something in you wants to touch it, to understand it, to make sense of it, and that movement is where everything starts to shift. You didn't get pulled in, nothing grabbed you, nothing trapped you. You stepped in, so gently, you didn't notice it. A small leaning becomes involvement. A simple noticing becomes interpretation, and that interpretation becomes identity. It happens in less than a second, so fast, it feels like it was always there. But it wasn't. There was a moment, just before that. A moment where nothing was personal, and then a line was crossed, not in the world, but in the way the moment was held. And once it is held, it begins to stay. And here is the deeper part. It's not just that you stepped in, it's that you stayed. The mind doesn't only touch the experience, it remains inside it. It holds it, it circles it, it returns to it, and in that staying, time is created. The moment no longer passes. It continues, not because it is still happening, but because it is still being held. And the longer it is held, the more solid it feels, more real, more personal, more true, until it no longer feels like something you entered, but something you have always been inside. And that is where the illusion becomes complete. But if you look carefully, there was a point before all of that, before you stepped in, before you stayed, before anything became you. A point where nothing was held, nothing continued, nothing needed to be understood, and that point is still here. Not in the past, but right before each new moment begins. And if that point is not crossed, nothing forms. Nothing becomes personal. Nothing needs to be carried, because without that step, there is no inside, no center, no one to be affected, only experience, moving freely, as it always has. And once you step in, it doesn't stop there. The moment itself has already passed. The word was spoken, the look has gone, the situation is no longer happening, and yet something continues, not outside, but inside the movement of mind. It returns, again and again. Not as the moment, but as a replay, a revisiting, a re-feeling. You go back, not physically, but mentally, to the same place, the same feeling, the same meaning, trying to understand, trying to fix, trying to complete. As if one more time might finally make it settle. But it doesn't, because each return is not ending it. It is continuing it. This is why it feels like it won't stop. Not because the moment is still alive, but because it is being recreated. Each time you revisit, you don't just remember, you rebuild, you bring back the feeling, the meaning, the me inside it, and it feels real again. Not as something happening now, but as something you are still inside. And so, it loops, not because life is repeating itself, but because the mind is continuing what has already ended. And the more it is continued, the more solid it feels, more personal, more true. Until you forget, it only exists because it is still being held in motion. And this is where it becomes heavy. Not at the beginning, but in the repetition, in the returning, in the holding, in the continuing. The mind believes it is trying to resolve something, to understand it, to make it right, but in doing so, it keeps it alive. Like replaying a song that never reaches the end. Like reading the same sentence again and again. hoping it will feel different, but it doesn't, because nothing new is happening. Only the same movement, repeating itself, and the more it is repeated, the deeper it feels. Not because it is true, but because it has been continued so many times. But what if nothing needed to be resolved? What if the moment was already complete? What if the only thing keeping it alive was the act of returning to it? And if that is true, then something very simple appears. Not a technique, not a method, just a seeing that what continues is not the moment, but the movement of staying with it. And if that movement is not followed, it has nowhere to go, nowhere to stay, nowhere to become something real. And in that, you begin to sense something different, a space where nothing is being carried forward, where nothing needs to continue. And before all of that, there is a space, not something you need to create, not something you need to reach. It is already there. Before the feeling becomes something, before the mind begins to move, there is a quiet openness. Nothing has formed yet, no meaning, no direction, no you inside it. Just a simple presence, untouched by what may come next. And in that, nothing is heavy. Nothing needs to be held. Nothing needs to be understood, because nothing has been turned into something that matters. But it is often missed, not because it is hidden, but because it is passed over. Attention moves too quickly, from the space into the feeling, from the feeling into the story, and in that movement, the space is forgotten, not lost, just not stayed with. And yet, even now, before the next thought forms, before the next reaction begins, that space is still here, unchanged, not affected by what has happened, not waiting to become anything, simply open, before anything is added to it. And when nothing is added, nothing contracts. The experience does not close in. It does not gather around a center. It does not become something personal. It moves, and it passes, on its own, without needing to be released, without needing to be resolved, because nothing is holding it in place. And in that, there is a different quality, a lightness that was not created, but revealed. Not by doing something, but by not continuing what had already ended. And in that space, something becomes clear. Not through thinking, not through effort, but through what is no longer happening. Nothing is being added, nothing is being held, nothing is being continued. And because of that, what remains is simple, undivided, unburdened, a kind of clarity that does not come from understanding, but from not interfering. And in that clarity, there is no conflict, no resistance, no need for things to be different, only a quiet openness that allows everything to be exactly as it is. And from that, something deeper begins to reveal itself. And in that space, before anything is added, there is a different kind of seeing, not through thought, not through memory, but directly. Nothing has been divided yet, not into good or bad, not into right or wrong. The moment is still whole, untouched by interpretation, and because of that, it is clear, not in a way you can explain, but in a way you can sense. There is no confusion, because nothing has been shaped into something else. This kind of clarity doesn't come from trying to understand. It appears. when nothing is interfering. And when seeing is clear, energy does not contract. It doesn't tighten around the experience. It doesn't pull inward to create a center. Nothing becomes mine. Nothing gathers weight. The moment is not held, and because it is not held, it is free to move, to rise, and to pass, without resistance, without needing to be released, without needing to be changed, because nothing is keeping it in place, and in that there is a natural ease, not created, not practiced, just there, when nothing is being continued. And when nothing contracts, the heart does not close. There is no need to protect, no need to defend, because there is no center being threatened, no identity being formed, and in that openness, something very gentle begins to appear, a softness, a willingness to let everything be as it is, not as an idea, but as a natural response. The moment is not resisted, not pushed away, not turned into conflict, and because of that, there is space for everything, even what once felt difficult, even what once felt too much. In the Buddhist tradition, this clarity has a name. Prajna, not something you create, not something you achieve, but something that is already present before the mind begins to divide. And when this clarity is here, the heart naturally opens. Not because you try to be kind, but because nothing is being separated, nothing is outside, nothing is rejected. And in that, what we call compassion appears, not as effort, not as practice, but as the natural expression of a space that does not divide. And this is why wisdom and compassion are never separate. They arise together from the same place. When seeing is clear, there is no resistance. When there is no resistance, there is no closing, and when there is no closing, the heart remains open, not as something you maintain, but as something that was never closed in the first place, and in that, life is no longer something you have to manage, or control, or protect yourself from. It is simply allowed to move, to change, to pass, within a space that does not become anything at all. And maybe now, something feels a little different, not because anything has changed, but because something is no longer being held. The same moments still arise, the same feelings still move, but they don't land the same way. They don't settle into something you have to carry, and in that, there is a quiet shift, so subtle, you might almost miss it. Nothing has been solved, nothing has been fixed, and yet something is lighter, not in the world, but in the way it is no longer being taken in. And as this becomes clear, something begins to loosen, the need to explain, the need to control, the need to continue, not because you stopped it, but because you saw it. You saw where it begins, and in that seeing, it loses its hold, gently, naturally, like something no longer being fed. And what once felt like it had weight begins to fade, not all at once, but quietly, as if it was never meant to stay. And in that gentle fading, something else becomes clear. It was never the moment that was heavy, not the word, not the feeling, not what happened. It was what formed around it, what was held, what was continued, what became me. And without that, there is nothing to carry, nothing to protect, nothing to resolve, only moments, appearing and passing as they always have. Before the story, there is silence. Before the me, there is space. Not empty, but open. Not distant, but here. And it has always been here. Before each thought, before each reaction, before anything becomes something, and if you remain, just for a moment, without stepping in, you may begin to sense nothing is missing, nothing is unfinished, nothing needs to become you. And maybe it was never life that was heavy, only what you became inside it. And without that, there is nothing to hold, nothing to continue, nothing that needs to begin, just this quiet, open, unchanging space where everything comes and goes without becoming anything at all. And in that, nothing ever begins.
Before a thought, there is a space. Before a meaning, before a name, a feeling moves, soft and unknown. Not yet a story, not yet your own. It comes and goes like wind through air. Nothing is held, nothing is there. So quiet, you almost miss the moment before it becomes this. There is a space before it becomes you, before the mind begins to move. Right in that moment, nothing is forming, nothing to hold, nothing to prove. Stay with it before it becomes meaning, before the story starts to grow. And in that silence, something is ending without you needing to let it go. A single moment touches the mind, and something subtle begins to arise. Not in the world, not out there, but in the way you start to care. A tone, a glance, a space between, and suddenly it feels like me. Not from the moment, but from the view. The way it slowly turns into you. There is a space before it becomes you, before the mind begins to move. Nothing is happening, only a forming, something appearing out of the blue. Stay with it before it is labeled, before it gathers It's not the feeling that pulls you in. It's not the moment that holds within. It's just a turning you never see, the point where nothing becomes a me. And if you pause right at that place, you'll find there was always space. So now just rest before it begins, before the movement, before it spins. No need to stop, no need to change. Just don't step into what rearranges. There is a quiet that doesn't move, a field untouched by what you prove. Stay here before it becomes you, before the mind calls it real. Nothing is missing, nothing is forming, just this presence you can feel. No need to end it, no need to release it. It was never held at all. And in this seeing, soft and open, nothing is rising, nothing falls before the story. There is silence before the me. There is space